Hi, good evening, everyone. It's good to be here. My name is Sister Tisa Fitzgerald. I'm a sister of St. Joseph, and I have the happy privilege of being the executive director of Our Children. That's H-O-U-R, Children. The name of the organization tells our work. We work with children whose lives are governed by the hour the mother was arrested, the hour they visit the mother either in jail or prison, and the best part, the hour of reunification. How I got here, and again, I'll give a quickie. This is our overview. You could really want to come and know us. Cross the bridge. We're right. Our center of operation is over in Queens. That's the other borough on the other side of the bridge, and we'd be happy to entertain you there and let you know and meet our families. But Charles, who's down at the end here, asked me how long I'm in this work. I asked him how old he was. He's 34. When he was 1, I got involved in this work, so I have a little bit of credibility here. Sister Elaine was working in Bedford Hills at the time at maximum security prison for women. And she invited other sisters to come together to open a home for children whose mothers were incarcerated. I was very happy in the world of education. I went really out of curiosity, and I never looked back. We opened a house for children in 1986, and it was for 9 years, brought those children back and forth to see their mothers in Bedford Hills. It was very evident after a while the children and the mothers needed housing. They needed a home if we were going to be caring for children. They needed a place where their mothers could come out and continue being the mother to that child. So the work of Our Children was really officially born in 1995. And fast forward to 2017, we have 2 arms. We have an inside arm that works at Bedford Hills in Taconic Correctional. For those of you who don't know it, Bedford Hills, you know Bedford Hills. You always hear maximum security in Westchester County. Directly across the street is Taconic Correctional. It's a medium security prison for women, averages 300 to 400 women, most of whom are coming directly back into our lives here, either in Westchester or somewhere around New York State. The work that we do at Bedford and Taconic now, we run the Family Service Program, we run the Nursery Program. The nursery currently has 28 mothers and 28 beautiful babies. We're able to stay there for a year and a half. We also do the Family Service Program, extensive parenting advocacy with the women, a huge transportation program that transports children from all over New York State to visit mothers at Bedford and Taconic, and all kinds of ongoing programs when we have a very creative and open superintendent who lets new things happen. So that's the work that we do inside the prison here, 2 prisons in Westchester County. We also work at Rikers Island, which is the largest penal colony in the world, right out housed near LaGuardia Airport. We do advocacy and parenting also inside there. The program that's the other arm that's critical, and it's really for your understanding tonight, is the housing program that has developed with Our Children. And that is the critical need for anybody coming out of state prison or jails across our country. We currently have 8 homes for women. We have 75 families who call us home, and a whole host of support programs. And you can't do anything out there unless you have a safe, secure home for yourself and your children. I could go on and on. I don't want her to raise her little thing telling me my time is up. I'm hoping that you have a lot of questions to ask about women. It was pointed out that Sing Sing is the progressive prison for men in New York State. Bedford Hills is the one for women. And because of the numbers, too often the work that's involved with women in criminal justice is forgotten. So I really plead with you to get more educated about the needs of women, which are not the needs are very different from the needs of men, especially if they're mothers. So with that, I'll pass it over to my friend here, Liz Gaines. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Liz Gaines. Do you want to do questions for Tisa?
No.
So I'm the president CEO of the Osborne Association, which, as you just saw, was founded by Thomas Mott Osborne, who was, in fact, the warden of Sing Sing in the early 1900s. His grandson, Eric, is 90 years old, is a president of my board, and the family has remained. To say it was a progressive family is an understatement. They were abolitionists and suffragettes, and really had a very progressive role and still live in Auburn, New York. But I had found them. I've only been at Osborne for 33 years. I actually started doing prison work. I grew up in Hastings, down the river from Sing Sing, and every time we would lose power and electricity, they used to tell us that it was because somebody was being electrocuted at Sing Sing, which was, I guess, their way of keeping us in line. But Julius and Ethel Rosenberg's children were raised in Hastings under a different name and were friends of the people who raised them were friends of my parents. So I was aware of this, but I went to law school in upstate New York, and not for the purpose of doing prison work, really for other purposes. But in 1971, my last year of law school, Attica Prison erupted in a rebellion, and every sort of progressive law student who was anywhere upstate got involved in one way or another. So I ended up sort of scuttling my other legal career to represent the Attica brothers, and then spent years as a prisoner's rights lawyer before I came to my senses and realized that being a lawyer was just a horrible thing to do, because you always won or you lost, and if you won, then people would be released as a defense lawyer with sort of nothing to support their needs, and if you lost, they went to prison, and then you sort of forgot about it. So I was pleased in 1984 to come to Sing Sing, but Sing Sing, but to Osborne. At the time, there were 2 or 3 people on the board said I could do whatever I wanted to do if I could raise money for it. But just a couple of months after I was there, my father of my children, who were at the time 6 and 2, went to prison, and where he remained for 25 years, and I ended up raising my children basically in prison visiting rooms, and very soon after realized that although there were wonderful people like my mentor and probably yours, Sister Elaine, working with women, the department at that time didn't see any reason why fathers should have any of similar kinds of supports or services. And so I proposed, having known people through my work at Prisoners Legal Services, pitched the idea of doing a fatherhood parenting program in the men's prisons. And so starting in 1984, 85, I guess, we began at Sing Sing. And I said we wouldn't just teach parenting, it would have to be a holistic, full program. So it would be establishing a family center in the visiting room, modeled on Bedford's brilliant idea for women, but also really services for children and families. And it really was my own, I guess, way of trying to deal with my own issues around having children with incarcerated parents and trying to figure out with their dad how would you go about this, and believing fundamentally that just because someone's in prison does not excuse them from having to have a full role as a parent. And so since that time, our we're now in 27 prisons in New York State in one way or another, hospitality centers, parenting programs, and 8 Rikers Island jails. So we have grown over these 33 years from 2 people to about 300, and we have our main offices are in Brooklyn, the Bronx, Newburgh, and we're going to be going to Buffalo soon. And the services now range from not just the parenting programs, we do alternatives to incarceration, workforce development, finding jobs for people coming home, reentry services. We have certified substance abuse treatment as an alternative to incarceration and for parole, and the whole kind of range of programs that you might imagine people need from the moment of arrest through the end. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to end and hope that, like Tisa, that there are good questions. Thanks.
Hello, my name is this working?
Yes.
Yeah. My name is Janet Donat, and I work for Family Services of Westchester, where 10 years ago I was asked to develop a pre-release reentry program for incarcerated mothers at the Westchester County Department of Corrections. So, you know, I've always been so inspired by Sister Tisa and Liz Gaines and the scope of the work that they do. My work with reentry is very, very small in comparison. I would love for it to be larger. It's a funding issue primarily. It's just a small piece of the work that I do, but it's a piece that I feel very, very passionately about and feel very honored to have been asked to develop this program. The name of the program is eMERGE. It's an acronym, Educating Mothers to Embrace Reentry and Gain Employment. So when I began this work 10 years ago, I learned, and I continue to learn a lot from the women that I work with inside the jail. But at the time, I was not even aware that there was a difference between jail and prison. So of course, you know, there's a very big difference, and the women that I work with that are in the jail are either awaiting sentencing, are pretrial detainees, and are unable to post bail, so they haven't even been convicted of a crime but are awaiting for their trial, and because they can't post bail, they are incarcerated. Or women that have been sentenced to a year or less of jail time. So the good news is the women that I work with are not there for very long. The challenge is that they are not there long enough to really have an opportunity to reflect on their situation and have opportunities that they might have with Sister Tisa at Bedford or Taconic in terms of engaging in higher education or long-term parenting programs. So, you know, we do the best that we can with what we have, and the eMERGE program offers an 8-week series of workshops for mothers, and the jail has worked with me over the past 10 years to really broaden that definition of mother, so that I now work with a handful of women who are not biological mothers, but they identify as being a caretaker of a child in their life, and that for them is a significant identity, and so the women that I work with don't have to be biological mothers. I also work with a lot of grandmothers who are now hoping to learn a little bit more about child development and their role in a child's life so that they can perhaps be a different grandparent than they were a parent. The 8 weeks are spent focusing not really on, the jail refers to the eMERGE program as the parenting program, but it really is an opportunity in my mind for women who participate in this program to think about how their experience of being parented as a child has influenced how they are with their own children, because most of us learn how to parent from the parenting that we've received. And so this is an opportunity to think about what felt good, what was positive that they want to take with them and replicate in their role as mother, and what did not feel so good, what was harmful. And for many of the women, this is the first time they've ever had an opportunity to really voice some of the, the trauma, abuse, and neglect that they have experienced as a child, and really give voice to that pain. We do a lot of preliminary work to create a safe space, knowing that anytime we talk about our children, it brings up a lot of emotion, and to talk about our own childhood experiences also brings up a lot of emotion. And so even though this program is housed in a maximum security facility at Westchester County Department of Corrections, we do try to create a safe room where we are, and the participants develop their own set of rules to govern the time that we spend together. And so it is a reflective program, and in my mind, the goal for me is to really establish a connection and some trust with the women that participate in this program, so that when they are released, they will return a phone call from me, and we can connect in the community, and we can start on the real work of reintegrating and reunification with the children. Every once in a while, I'll have a participant who moves on to Bedford and then to Connick, and so sometimes I share clients with, you know, I really hate the word inmate, so I don't use that word. So sometimes Sister Tisa and I share clients. In fact, there's a woman that I was just speaking to with Sister Tisa that was in my program about 8 years ago and is now going to be released from Taconic Correctional Facility in January, and we have been able to stay in touch through letters. So I look at this reentry support, you know, and connection and building of relationship as really being foundational in terms of helping the women that I work with move forward, so that, you know, even though this particular woman has been incarcerated, we've maintained the connection, and she knows that I am here. The Emerge program is here for her if she lands in Westchester County. Thanks to a generous grant from Westchester Community Foundation, we've been able to also expand our reentry work to include a unique program called Coming Home. I've had the honor of working with Charles in that program, and I'll introduce him in a minute. Westchester County is very rich in services. We have a lot to offer. But for returning citizens who have spent their period of incarceration being identified by a number, sometimes the system can feel very impersonal. And what I found was really lacking in reentry services in this county was a relational program. And Coming Home offers that. It is a program that offers supportive community in partnership with a faith-based community. It's not a religious program, but it is in partnership with a faith-based community that offers a sense of welcome, of non-judgment, and a time to come and be part of community. Many of the women that I work with have never really felt part of a community, and that is such an important aspect of healing. So Coming Home offers a relationally focused program with one-on-one mentorship, offering work on setting goals, on life skills, and all through a trauma lens, because the experience of trauma, grief, and loss is inherent in any incarceration. So that really needs to be addressed in order for somebody to be able to re-enter the community whole and at least beginning on a journey of healing. There is more information outside about the Coming Home program. We're really very excited about offering that now in 3 locations in Westchester County. And it was what brought allowed me to meet Charles Lewis, who has been the facilitator of the Coming Home program in Rye, and also is the author of Mr. Etiquette, an incredible reentry curriculum that he has developed himself. So I will pass it on to Charles.
Good evening. My name is Charles Lewis. I currently work for Project Renewal in New York City at Fort Washington Men's Shelter. It is a shelter for men who have mental health and substance abuse history. I work there as a residential aide as well as a peer specialist. So on top of making sure that they are taken care of as far as their linens, toiletries, I also counsel men one-on-one. And I really enjoy, can you hear me? Better? Okay. So I really enjoy that job. It allows me to get personal with the clients there. As Janet has said, we met through the Coming Home program at Rye Presbyterian Hospital. I have been fortunate enough to, because of Janet no longer being able to have the role of coordinator, the position was offered to me. So I am now the coordinator of that program. Last year, I was the peer specialist, and a facilitator of the program, but the year before that, I was a client of the program. In 2011, I was incarcerated. I was sentenced to 6 years in and 5 years on parole, and I am still on parole. I have been out of prison since 2015, and actually the 30th of this month will make 2 years. Thanks. Since I've been home, I have gone to 2 schools, one online to get my certification as a peer specialist, and I went to Christine Valmy to get my license as a nail technician because I wanted to open up a nail salon. If women like to get their nails done, it's a pretty expanding business. I wanted to get into it. Paid almost $4,000 to go to school there, only to be told that because of my felony, that I cannot get my license. Now, I'm not even upset about that. I feel like it's my fault. I should have researched that first. So I can't get upset about it. But it was, for about maybe a day or so, I was pretty upset about it. I mean, it was $4,000 that I could have used for something else. But it was also a dream. It was a plan that I had prepared while I was incarcerated. I had been working on that plan the entire time. I had the blueprint laid out. And for it to just be taken away because of my past, I couldn't understand. But it led me on to get my certification as a peer specialist, which allowed me to be the facilitator for the Coming Home program. And now the coordinator. I'm happy that I cannot own a nail salon at this current time. I'm not giving up. Because eventually I'm going to move out of New York State and go to another state and open it up there. But I am happy because it put me in a position where my expertise is, in a sense. Not only was I incarcerated, but now that I'm out and I'm actually working with men who were formerly incarcerated through the Coming Home program, but as well as at Project Renewal. Project Renewal is a very, very special program. It is one of the few programs that offers housing to men and women who are coming home from prison. And it is housing within regular apartments all throughout New York City. It's not a designated building for Project Renewal. You wouldn't know that your next door neighbor, myself, is a part of the program. And it offered me a sense of independence and hope. Because had I not been a part of Project Renewal, I have no idea where I would be. The support that I received from Project Renewal then and even to this day has helped with my transformation. So I am a testimony of what being there for someone who has a violent past, who has a felony, but being there for someone who, even with my past, I wanted to change. And I needed an opportunity, and I just needed people to be there for me and to support me and to not hold my past against me. And I received that through Project Renewal. I also received it from the Coming Home program. It is a remarkable, both programs are great. And it speaks to, like I said, the volumes of supporting people and being there for them. I also opened up a business, Mr. Etiquette. It is an experiential learning program, curriculum that I developed. And I decided to develop this program, one, because I couldn't open up my nail salon, and I totally believe that in order for me to grow financially, I need to own my own business. Working for someone for the rest of my life doesn't work for me. The gentlemen, we had to learn how to bow. And the women had to learn how to curtsy. And I asked my mother not too long ago, why did she teach us that? And she said because it was a part of, when she went to school, she had to learn how to do it so that her social acceptance would be there. So when I applied the principles that I've learned from my parents to places like HRA, whenever they would call me, whether they would call me with my first name, last name, or just let's go, I would always answer respectfully. I received favor. Many times when you're going through HRA, you have to sit there and you have to go through the programs that they tell you to go to, even if it's not to your best benefit. Like, I wanted to be a peer specialist. I also wanted to own a nail salon, but they wanted me to work jobs doing maintenance. I don't have a problem doing maintenance, but that's not my career goal, so why are you trying to set me up to do something that I don't want to do? But because I was able to express myself, to speak in a polite manner, I received a lot of favor. I didn't have to do a lot of the programs that other people had to do. And I said to myself one day, it would be unfair for me to keep this information to myself. So I decided to develop a curriculum, and some of the courses that I offer are public speaking, and we're going through the Toastmasters. I went through Toastmasters while I was incarcerated, and the public speaking, the way Toastmasters teaches it is just incredible. So I'm in the process right now of working with Toastmasters. We do dressing, how to dress, why to dress, and I go into details of suits, shoes, the different types of shoes, the different types of suits, why, what you should wear to an interview, what you shouldn't wear to an interview, what you will wear business casual, what you will wear casual. Finance. Robert, I always mess up his last name. Is it Kawasaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad? He has a game, and it's called Cash Flow. And in that game, he teaches you investment strategies. But also what you have to do in that game is you have to make sure that you budget your money and you have to go over your finances on every row. And one of the things that most people who I grew up with were not taught was how to manage your finances. So I do it through the game Cash Flow, because I've learned that through experience. For me, experience was the best teacher. But sometimes you don't want to go through the bad experience of learning a good lesson, but the Mr. Etiquette curriculum is a curriculum based off of experiential learning. And it is being applied at the Coming Home program, and it's also being applied at Fort Washington Shelter for Project Renewal. Thank you.
Thank you, and Charles, I think your story could be a whole program that we, but I also know as a trained public speaker, if you see the moderator stand up, you know how to bring it to a close. So that was a good lesson. We have time, quite a bit of time for questions and comments. As I'm going to take the prerogative of the chair to ask our panel, especially our people who have been in this field for a long time, when Charles mentions about hope, and we see up here that now Sing Sing from a house of fear to a chance of hope. Have you seen progress in the issue of rehabilitation, reentry, reform in your career, sister? Could you?
Certainly has become a household word. 30 years ago, nobody talked of reentry, so that alone, obviously, finances is pushing the envelope. When the American people realize the money that is being wasted on incarcerating people with no end in sight, that has really been a factor that has made people stand up. So yes, there have been more investments inside, but there still is a mean spirit inside correctional facilities. I mean, there's not, if you say they're rehabilitation, we're not seeing that. There are good programs, good people who come in and try to do things, but on the whole, they're really not places that are anything for human beings to be exposed to at all.
Liz?
Well, I mean, after Attica, things did change for the better briefly, or in some, I mean, college came into New York State prisons. The visiting changed. They brought in contact visits. New York remains one of the few states that allows overnight visiting, family reunion program. All of these things 40 people died for, right? So to be really clear is it didn't just happen out of the goodness of people's hearts. It took this amazing event to bring people around to really be able to say, oh, those are human beings there. And that kind of ebbs and flows, and it sometimes gets better and sometimes gets worse. I think that time was a time when the people going into prison were part of the larger political movements that were going around at that time, the civil rights movement, anti-war movement, and our founder used to say the walls are not there just to keep the prisoners in, they're also there to keep the public out. And so part of what has been our goal really is to bring folks in and opening up. I think that's the goal of the museum and how we see Sing Sing, because once you've seen this, you can't unsee it. When you see people in cages, which is clearly not the way people were designed to be, but the other thing is we do begin to see that people that participate in our programs don't go back to prison for the most part. Mm-hmm. We know more about neuroscience, we know about neuroplasticity, we know that people can change, and we begin to think about this. Unfortunately, where we're not seeing progress is that years ago, when they decided that people should get these Methuselah sentences, that you would have to be Methuselah to outlive, we now see that older adults, people aging in prison, are the single fastest growing population. They are increasing at a rate of about 4,000%. Right now, and these are people serving very, very long sentences, unknown in the rest of the world, the way we incarcerate people. So I would say that the conditions are nicer, but we still have no ability to monitor our desire for punishment. We love punishment. The Australians got the criminals and we got the Puritans, and we're living with that.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to see if anyone has any questions. I'd like Dana, if you could please join us. We have a chair for you there. And in case anyone has any history questions that I can't answer. Yes.
I also have to add just one little comment that I sit here tonight speaking on behalf of the women that I've had the privilege to live with for the past 30 years. So listen, as women come home, and I live now with 12 families in the house that I'm in, and you listen to their stories around the kitchen table, I often go upstairs and say, why? Why did they have to spend 20, 30 years learning a lesson? Or, trying to get through a childhood past that was horrific, and they ended up, obviously, where they had no other way to go, in the sense the streets drew them. So that's what my perspective. I don't speak here tonight because I'm not there. I've never been there. But I speak always on behalf of the women that I live with and continue to learn from.
So it's the system is just completely broken, completely broken. And the young man that I know that's been shifted from one prison to another is mostly in solitary. He has no access to any programs at all. So what are we doing as a community to undo this system of incarceration here in this country that is a moneymaker?
Anyone on the panel want to?
Well, I think we're all completely in agreement with what you just stated, that in fact, I don't even call it the criminal justice system; it's a criminal legal system, is very broken. And I just think that focusing on, at least for the representatives on this panel, the focus on pre-release reentry is the one small bit that we can do. Because the recidivism rate, when the statistic that you showed, the 42%, when people are engaged and have an opportunity to address some of the trauma and the grief that they have been exposed to in their life through programs that do have more of a relational focus, the recidivism reduces. But I think that it's all about restorative community and a community effort, a collaboration, and a welcoming back, and I think also a re-education of the community. There is a lot of prejudice in the community too, and people very concerned about returning citizens moving into their neighborhood, and yet I think through the Coming Home program, it gives opportunity for people to learn that there's really so much more that we have in common than what divides us, and why not look at that and learn from each other?
But in terms of a systemic answer, like when I started, there were 12 prisons and 12,000 people in prison in New York State. By the time it had ballooned to 74,000, every one of the new prisons was built in a Republican district by a senator who was on the Senate Finance Committee. And it absolutely was a jobs program for upstate. And there's no way to wipe clean the fact that it is a fundamentally racist system. So we're not going to resolve those issues with our programs. And I love our programs. It makes me feel great every day, except I would love to be out of business. And you're not kidding when you say, when we have a program on Rikers Island that was funded by Goldman Sachs, gave us tons of money to prove a particular point. And working with the correctional officers, when they said what was the goal of our prison, of our program, we said we're supposed to reduce recidivism by 10%. And they said, well, why would we want to do that? That's less jobs for us. Yep. So, and this was in front of their boss. I mean, this wasn't like some, secret conversation they were having. That is exactly what they meant. And by the way, the recidivism rate is not 42%. People return to prison at nearly that rate, but 25% of that are people that are returned for violating the conditions of their parole. Fewer than 10% are returned for new crimes. It's important to realize that, because we scare the hell out of communities if they believe that people are out there. And even those returns are not typically for, horrific crimes. So we're actually not doing that badly, but you're right. We're heavily invested in continuing it. New York's a little better because we don't have private prisons, and we're not yet going nuts with fines and the kinds of things you see in some places, but we can't be complacent.
And education is your answer. Finding out when you can quote to me how much it is per person to be inside a prison. Not too many people know that. People don't even realize the numbers involved in New York State and New York City. So it's really educating yourself about what's going on and then doing something about it on both ends. Because the other thing is, you talk about reentry, there really is there aren't too many places where people can go home to. And if you can't go home and start a life anew with some kind of support system and education for jobs and careers, you're going to go back. You're going to be part of that parole violation numbers that go. So you really have to invest, not just say it's a bad system. How are you going to invest your money in making it better concretely on the outside?
The need is much greater than
Oh, the need is enormous. We hardly touch it. But because we work inside Bedford and Taconic, women come to know us. We run those programs. We have social workers inside, people running the nursery and advocacy programs. And then we also work with people like the Osborne up in Albion, which is the third and the largest women's prison up near Buffalo. So it's inside and really word of mouth. We don't advertise, that's for sure. But again, it's sad because people really come looking for a home. And that's what we don't have enough of.
What happens to the women who don't get into your program?
They end up in the shelter system for the most part. Yeah.
And then, Mr. Lewis, is your program more expansive, your residential program? And how many people are?
Oh, Project Renewal it's a big organization. So not only do they have the shelter, but they also have a program called PTSP, Parole Transition Supportive Program. And that was the program that I went through. When I left prison, I went into the shelter for about a month.
There you go.
And I did an interview with Project Renewal to get into their program.
Mm-hmm.
And once I got accepted into their program, they had an apartment waiting for me, to which I had to get on public assistance at the time, and public assistance paid my rent. And I was able to do all of my programs while public assistance paid my rent. And then once I finished with my programs, I was able to get a job and then get my own apartment, which Project Renewal helped me to get.
Now, so many of the people who are incarcerated do have mental health issues.
Yes.
Probably came without any of their paperwork that they need to get onto public assistance, how much assistance does the jail give, do the programs give, to help get these people the paperwork they need to even start the application process?
Well, I was in Fishkill, and I had all of the paperwork that I needed. I had everything. This will answer both questions. One of the things that I believe needs to get done on the part of those who are coming home are to take advantage of the programs that are out there. Because there are programs that are out there, and we have to be responsible and take into account that we committed a crime and we offended someone and we hurt people, and people are going to look at us in a different way. But accept that. Accept the responsibility, because especially if you committed the crime, accept the responsibility. And so I think one of the best things for someone who is coming home to do is to accept the responsibility that you did something wrong and seek out the programs. To this day, I still have to go to parole. And when I sit down and I listen to what the men are saying around me, I can see that majority of them are going to go back to prison. And it's because they haven't changed their frame of thinking. So as you were saying, to educate yourself, we have to do that on our part too. We have to educate ourselves.
New York does a better than average job of having people leave with papers, and if you're seriously mentally ill, the Office of Mental Health makes some efforts, but New York State released 6,000 people into the New York City shelter system last year. And our focus has been around families and trying to get people reconnected to families, because families are the reentry program of first and last resort, the 24-hour-7 program, and but we stigmatize families in the same way that we stigmatize formerly incarcerated people. And part of it is the number of, when we used to have an 800 number, and women would call me and say things like, my husband went to prison and you need to help me find a new church home because I am not welcome where I've been going because of my husband's involvement in crime. And so, you know, having communities that are, it's not just about people coming home, it's what are we doing to support families so that they are able to make a home for people coming home and having those papers and having a place to go.
Did you?
Well, I just wanted to say, in terms of education, to educate the community, not only the people who are coming out, but what sort of programs exist within communities where people would be welcomed. I mean, the job is beyond our capacity, but I wonder if legislatures are doing anything to provide funding for the kind of education you're talking about.
Well, they have established task forces in each of the counties and boroughs, and some are better than others, some are a little slow to start. I'm from Queens, and we're finally getting one after many, many years of emphasis that this is what a mandate for them to do. So they're really should be the focal point of getting the word out about available services, but also advocating politically for money behind that, because, you know, so many services start and end because the funding dried up, and then what happens to people then?
And my second question was, what work is being done for alternatives to prison?
There are quite a lot of front-end alternatives, not so much outside the city. That's what we're trying to do in more other places. In New York City, there's an amazing web of nonprofits that, I mean, we just got a bucket of money from the district attorney of Manhattan, who is sitting on $1 billion of civil forfeiture money, because Manhattan is where a lot of financial crime happens, and he's funding things, including we're opening an office in Harlem so that when police arrest people, instead of bringing them, they're given an alternative. You can either go to court or you can go to the Osborne Association, and if you complete this 3-hour intervention that we're going to do, we're going to teach people how to administer overdose kits for opioid disorders and restorative justice practice. So, I mean, we should be serving 3,000 people a year who, instead of going to court, and I have to say, the DAs, they've said they're going to, you know, do things like maybe they shouldn't arrest everybody for fair beating or for low levels of marijuana. Not so much in Westchester. We haven't quite.
No.
There's very
no,
little
yeah.
in Westchester.
The 5 boroughs have also been on the forefront of alternatives for drug treatment, so that instead of going into prison for addiction, they are sent to treatment programs, and if they complete that, then there is no felony charge. But it's really been the 5 boroughs that have been ahead, and some of the others lag way behind. And upstate is completely out of it. They don't even have drug rehabs in some of the counties. So we're seeing a massive influx of people from the upstate New York counties because there is nothing for drug treatment up there.
Westchester does have a drug court, and part of it is, though, educating different fields, like because we do all this work with TISA around children of incarcerated parents, we train teachers, guidance counselors, foster care workers, pediatricians, social medicine people, all of them, and more lately we've been trying to work on nursing homes and senior places because when my kid's father had started developing, after he got out of prison, dementia, because of his record, we couldn't get him into a nursing home until we, thank God, after all this work, I know people. So I was able to get him someplace in Westchester, but come on, it's bad.
I really want to thank you for all the work that you do. I find the word reentry kind of scary. And I'm wondering if there's any work, political or directly with businesses or with housing, to try to change the rules about whether or not people can be reunified with their families by living in public housing, or whether or not corporations are going to change. Ban the box is not enough, because when people refuse to hire someone at Starbucks because they have a felony record, which can be anything from like stealing a car to like pushing someone in the wrong way, or threatening someone with a box cutter or something like that, until those people like Walmart and Starbucks and Stop and Shops are willing to hire people, the opportunity for these people is so limited. I'm just wondering if there are people who are kind of trying to persuade bigger systems like housing authority and things like that to allow these people to live in the community and really work in jobs that are available.
We've actually placed people at Walmart, Starbucks, Target, and pretty much every other place since New York, even before New York passed the Fair Chance Act. It's actually gotten quite a bit better, but it is, organizations like Osborne literally work with one employer at a time, and we give them wage subsidies and say, please try them out, and after they see it, they do that, and we have a new Secretary of State who I believe can get you a nail salon certificate. Rosanna Rosato, she's amazing.
Right.
She lives in Westchester, and she's working very hard on the licensing issues.
Yes, and there's actually bills crafted for that, because up in Albion, they have a huge cosmetology lab where women trained to come out and open hair salons, and then they found out they couldn't do that. So I know that it's in the works, so we'll be at your salon soon, Charles.
Cool. And
I just wanted to add one thing. You know, a lot of great conversation came out of this panel tonight, and if you would like to stay connected and share your email with us, please, at connectionswestchesterlibraries.org, or Conversations, I'm sorry, either one, Conversationswestchesterlibraries.org or connectionswestchesterlibraries.org, and these websites are on those pamphlets that we have out there. Give us your email, we'll keep you connected, we can keep this conversation going, and we can help provide information to you on how you can put this into action, and you can make some changes that we desperately need.
And if you'd like to visit Sing Sing or Bedford or Taconic, I'm sure we have graduations and different programs that TISA and we run that I don't know if you can offer a tour, but we can.
I don't have that much power.
Coffee and conversation. Find a house in Westchester, and our children will open up a home for mothers there. That's your challenge tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'd just like to close by saying that we have just scratched the surface as far as information. There are so many programs out there that are showcased in our library community conversations. The Greenberger Center was represented last week, the Hudson Link for higher education, the rehabilitation through the arts will be showcased on Thursday night. So stay involved, stay informed, and there's literature from all these programs, including the Sing Sing Prison Museum, that you can pick up on the way out. Please thank the panel for a wonderful.
Thank you.